Okay, good day everyone. I have been again working off stream, like I do quite often actually, but I'm going to explain what I was doing and hopefully you can follow along. So I have introduced the concept of threads into my program. Now I'm basically just wrapping around the Windows API to do this. And I need to do something similar for other platforms like Linux or Emscripten, which I haven't really done because I don't really see the worth until I make it work for one platform, such as Windows, which is my main debugging platform. So all these functions, they are defined in the game, so the game knows about them. But the implementation is coming from a OS specific implementation. So here we have thread create, and it's doing the typical Win32 stuff, create thread, and then getting the handle, setting the handle here. I decided to put the OS handle as a void star because I'm assuming all the platforms will have something very similar and not more than a U64. If it is more than a U64, maybe I can do a union or something like this. But anyway, we're having thread create, thread destroy, thread count, and thread count is counting how many threads are available for us to use effectively. So number of processors on my machine, it's 8. And of course, we're already on the main thread. So the actual count will be 7 that we can use for worker threads and things like this. Now, your mileage might vary. Maybe on a low end phone, you will have 4 threads, or on like an old CPU or something like this. But on more modern system, it could be even 64. And you should also remember, this is not the number of cores, because each core very typically has 2 hyperthreads. And this is giving you the number of hyperthreads on the system. So look that up if you are curious about it. I'm just like explaining that's what it is. So we are getting that for count, and we are creating a thread for every. We're creating a thread for every core that we have, simply because then we can, in theory, utilize the max processing. Now you could have any number of threads that you want. You on Windows, I think you can create thousands of threads if you actually. But the issue here is that you need to make them, because if you only have 8 logical cores, then only 8 things can run at the same time, and they need to be able to. One thread needs to, in order for the next, have some processing power to actually. So more threads is not all. Even basically until the limit of the is the maximum potential power, and anything above that, only for how you structure. Have a bunch of threads for waiting for network connections, being most of the threads for that, and they will take it. Now we are creating these, and I have also special tab behind this to have a thread for the game, the physics, like the main game loop, and then we have another independently run the graphics game loop, share the memory in a specific way, graphics loop, and we can also lock the physics loop, because there's the physics loop 240 hertz, 500 hertz. Even if wasting energy processing, if you don't need, granularity. So I'm thinking we're probably going to run the physics, but we want the user to be able to 240. So that also, in order to not draw the same thing over and over, so that you are running the game at 30 and you just display the same frame, 8 times or something like that, running at 240 hertz, you need to interpolate between different states, the last up state and the state before. The way I solved that, graphics. Right at the top of the, you might recognize you're having the mesh draw. And what I actually did, I'm having two position. So that means in our mesh, we can have states of position, and we do lerp and slurp, linear interpolation. And we lerp between those two states. Create that just, we can have, the physics can have one copy. And then we are storing that information in, which is what we were doing before. And I've just cut it down a little bit more so that we're comparing it, drawing loop graphics. Right. So I don't know if we're gonna have a third special or anything. The audio, possibly networking. That's not current plan. But any threads that we are having beyond that, and I think any system, so you're probably always an extra 1 thread, 5 thread, 10 thread that you can use. Now you don't necessarily thing in this. Now we might turn this down. Like it depends on how many threads we have. I would just like to have at least work. So any extra threads that we are having, we are going to use physics updates. We are creating them here, and then we enter the game. The game is still here. We are having a thread run. When we are creating the, we are putting them, we are assigning them thread start. Thread start. Thread start. All it does, okay, while the I booting the, I probably because I'm creating the, and then I'm assigning the thread ID. I might, that's not super important right now. Then once we have the ID assigned, we are running, because I don't really care about assigning job platform specific. I'm calling thread run game. So here we are immediately grabbing this. We're having this. We're just, but Windows specifically, this has to be function pointers. Yeah, we enter here and we look at the task that we are assigned. So the draw, we have draw, game, that's it for it. And I haven't really gotten further because I'm still sort of designing in how I want this. Probably this will game loop. We will get to that one. For now, they are just running and like nothing, gain nothing. Except if we close the application, we also close the thread. So what I've been working on is having work queue and wrap some comic. Now yield here. Check if something is, and if nothing is being done. It's sort of like a sleep, but it doesn't necessarily always just go off 1 millisecond. Can't really, at least Windows can't count given back to you a specific time. You can tell it to sleep. So you might not always want 1 millisecond, and you might not want 2 seconds. So this is just yielding the thread such that Windows said, okay, I can thread and I can do something different. Come back as soon as that is to be done. Then atomics, but value, getting it Eric's. And this one is a little bit, essentially, you are comparing value to a specific value. And only if you predicted what the value was correctly, and then you get back that was already. That's how you can tell if the swap, if the exchange actually happened. So this means, for example, where we are here, we can try to reserve X in an array. And then if we got a value, then we can try to calculate track that occupied or the, yeah, we're checking if it's not occupied just to see completely filling up. And if that all checks out, then we do this comparison. That's only to check text that we reserve with this read is the same one that there, and we Now this loop, could be done in nanoseconds, but you could imagine their thread tries to push an job at the very it has grabbed the index that we have erased. So that's why we are doing this. We're trying to reserve, checking if free, and we're trying to do the query exchange to update the index only if it was same value as when we read it. So that's a very short code does. And then if we actually did manage to reserve, then we can write things like function boolean, or that if the thread would grab this, if it would grab job that we have assigned before we have actually managed to write the function pointer, then we would have it. Or maybe the function pointer is there, but the data wasn't written yet. Like, again, these are things that are very unlikely to happen. But it could be 1 in a million chance. And just because it happens once, the entire application. So that's why we are putting this here. Ready Boolean is a file boundary. At least on Windows. I'm not sure if boundary but we will get to that. Now I've also tried to add this message. That's what I'm in. What we were having in the game was pushing similar to how, so that I can react to things like window size changing of the without polluting the game function, game environment with a bunch of dependencies. So that I thought that was a pretty good solution. But the issue is that this entire thing doesn't work with multi-threading just because of memory sake and race condition. Because again, we might push a message, but before we have set the data for the message, the thread might reach it and try to read. So all this we need to kind of, and we will replace it with this task, with task. And each specialized thread will need a different queue because only the graphics queue will deal with OpenGL commands. Only the game will deal with game-specific things, and maybe the OS needs a third one. Like I said, I'm not sure we will if we will get to that, but that's where we are, and that's where I will start off from right now. So yeah, all this stuff we will rewrite with this. And right now the program compiles, but we have one issue, and that is if we run the game, we get to, oh, actually I already changed it in entity here. Nah. Okay. The thing is, what we were doing before was we were having one thread, and this one thread was opening the window, and it was creating the context for OpenGL, and then it went into the game, and inside the game, like the context for the thread is different from the C code itself. So in here we are not polluted with OpenGL stuff, but the thread still has those things somewhere on the stack. So what I realized is that if I'm having a function pointer to text create, which is a main, and then main is having the context for calling OpenGL and doing stuff, so we're creating meshes and things like this. Well, because it's the same thread, single threaded, the OpenGL state is initialized on that thread. But if you have multiple threads and one is initializing OpenGL and another one is trying to call OpenGL functions, then that doesn't work. What you need to do is to keep either you need to initialize multiple contexts, which I'm not even sure how you would do that in a good way. So I'm going to keep the OpenGL context to be on one thread, which is the graphics thread. And if we need to do something like create a new mesh, then we are pushing that as a task to the graphics thread from other threads. So instead of calling text create here directly, we're going to push a task to the thread queue. So I have already added the thread queue here for graphics. And my goal today is to make this work, essentially, so that we can maybe run the game again. I'm not sure. We will see. But at the very least, this talk push should work such that we are processing commands from the game in OpenGL rather than doing it from the game thread, because the game thread doesn't have the OpenGL context initialized. So let's start. Now, the immediate issue that I realized here is that when we are pushing with this function, we have a void start to some data, but I don't have anywhere to put this data. And it's not as easy as just putting some command here. This function specifically, text create, it needs the command, which is for the JSON parser, to look up the specific string that we're trying to draw. And then it needs these S-params, which are things for the shaping library, I think, with the string style here. Can I get the... Yeah, font ID, size, layout. These are all defined here. So again, the game doesn't really know about them. It only knows about structs. Doesn't know. So the simple way of dealing with it would to just have like a struct message data, and then we put the pointer to that into the function. But that doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is that as soon as we have returned from this task push, we are returning, and all of this is just removed. Like it might for small amount of, but this is on the stack. The stack is accessing after you have already gone out of the scope. It's undefined, and definitely you cannot rely. I think it's UB, but imagine that graphics library, like if the graphics library is getting this task and processing immediately, then that's fine. But imagine that it's already busy, drawing. After the current frame, it comes back after a millisecond and it tries to read from the stack. This is all we're doing. Something. Like this doesn't work. It works. It could work for the moment. Maybe if we are having, but this is like a no. Don't do this. So then we need to have some place to store this data. And this data needs to be sort of unless we want to. So I think it would be better that the multiples, which means that we need to know what the cache line size is. Maybe we start by creating a memory buffer where multiple of, and the thing that we put in there constructs different. Hello, Ariel Brito. Thanks. I know this is going over, like this is complicated. I'm not pretending to be an, but I know there's so many layers of depth that you can. But for anyone following the videos that I've, hope it makes sense. Hope also currently also, but unfortunately, can't. This is not a lesson from computer science, so I'm not going too deep into it. I'm just trying to trying to do. We want to, for every thread, queue, we're having, we also, actually this should be, and this can be our text screen. And then what we had 2 pointers. You are really interested in game engines, so this is amazing. Though as of now, I'm learning how to build memory pools for generic data. In the future, I want to take a shot at great series. Thank you. Memory pools for generic data. I think that's, if you want to take a look at what I've done, you can look at my memory arena. All the code is public on my. It's the, well, the heap manager is one. This is the thing that is actually managing creation and destruction, like block data. But then I have game arena. So this is just a linear arena. Maybe the implementation is main file. Have arena alloc. It's very, very simple things. I'm having one. So alloc is just setting everything. And then I'm using. So I'm having a block. It's a size. And I'm pushing that block with the size onto the like heap allocated. And then the problem with this is that I can only deallocate the last thing that I allocated. I can't really have holes in it. So the way to make this more malleable is this heap manager. So I'm allocating a huge block of some number of fixed size blocks again. So again, the arena can have dynamic allocated size. But then I'm allocating a fixed block that is having slices that exactly, and then those I can manage with holes, so I can have free slot. I can keep track of that. You use the chunks in Stride. I'm going to take a look at it later. Can't you use something like dirty bits and policies? Dirty bits. Like there's many strategies. The thing is, I don't feel like writing a dynamic allocator with it. I think a static allocator that I have written is good enough for 90% of the time. And the 1% that I do need to use dynamic allocator, I will just use math. Like even like in the game, maybe have a wrapper for it, but I haven't actually encountered a place where I need to have a dynamic allocator. I can just have a fixed size dynamic allocator, which is very easy because you have, if you delete something in the middle, then the next time you allocate something, you just fill that space. So it's extremely easy to. And if you actually need to have these like super granular things, then you just use math. At least that's what I'm doing. And when I'm doing something like, let's say I'm reading, then I am pushing that onto the arena application, but then I'm processing immediately, and then I'm deleting the dynamic. So I'm processing it, for example, taking a texture and it to the, and then the GPU is having its own separate memory. I don't really have to care. Then I can deallocate the texture because I'm not doing anything more with it. So you see what I mean? Now, if I need to file, then I can just load that once and I keep it for the entire lifetime of the system, because anything like that I'm gonna load. It's gonna be hundreds of kilobytes, maybe a few megabytes. But if you look at any application today, they might reserve 2 GB of your memory. So like if your application is using 50 megabytes just in static allocations that you are just keeping, even if you're not using it all the time, if you're just like keeping it in memory because it's difficult to allocate it, like it's annoying, then just keep it. So I'm trying to not overcomplicate things. while still having things lean. Anyway, if we go back to what we're doing, we are creating, this is the argument. I think we can just take this. We just allocate it together because these are pointers. Like most of the, now we have to be careful because, okay, this constcar command, the pointer to a statically, because essentially this is a that I have allocated. Let me show you my arena. Allocating everything in allocate memory. So I have two arenas. We have two arenas. So I have my static arena. I have three arenas. So I have this state, which is the current state of the program, having window graphics, whatever. So that's one. That's statically allocated. I fill it once, beginning of the program, and then I have my static allocation. These are loading things that I part of this loading file model or then I have Scratch. Scratch is just working memory. Something where I load something. So I have a JSON. I have a JSON with all of the text in the game, basically. So that is allocated on the statically assigned. And I grab a pointer. The pointer starts there, and it's I have a or, or no, because it's see, here we are. Here's the issue. Having things on the I am writing this command. I'm calling my create button. If I create button, calling the calling text create. But when I return, all that state is going to go back to the game. Out of this, now this doesn't. So I can't actually have a. I was thinking that would be fine. But actually, what I need to, if I want to, what would I say? the hardest part of a game? Well, the hardest part that I have encountered, because you always have to, and so the way that people are solving this is that they are just using monospace English with no funny characters. But if you want to have more than that, or maybe it's a Japanese game and then it only supports Japanese characters, and like if you try to play a Japanese game on an English computer, then you get just and then you need to have community patches. So if you actually want to support multiple languages, like in the engine itself, then that's a huge task. There's some libraries that help you shape the text, rise the volume, and I'm using both of them. But even then, super complicated. So much about it, just to get something very basic work. It's definitely the hardest thing that I. Now, this part that I'm working on right now, also pretty difficult, because multi-threading and using multi-threading in your program, separating update loop, it's also quite complex. We're saying, well, you're using, and let's say the multi-threading thing probably. I felt like the text was harder simply because I had never done it before with multi-threading. I think the string params also need. Where is it coming? Well, this might change. This might change. Button style. I don't know. Is this ever going to change? Like here right now, there's only one button style, but you might have. That's another hard part. Multi-thread. Every time you do something, you have to consider something something that needs to synchronize. Then you're gonna have a bad. I see. I can do something about that. I think it's not that I'm soft spoken per se. I think it's that I'm moving my head. I'll I can adjust the filter. So here are my mic settings. But the open threshold is 40 and the close is -40. Maybe I just move it by 10 decibels. Yeah, this microphone is a condenser mic, and it's very directional. So if I start talking over here, you're barely going to hear me compared to when I'm speaking directly into it. But hopefully, let me know if that is better. I have listened to myself on my own videos, and I didn't feel like there was an issue. But you know, if I'm moving around too much, then that could be the main issue. All right. So to be safe right now, I think I would rather just copy that entire thing here. Now that makes this struct. Can I not see the size? Well, okay, so this is not. It doesn't know the size of this because I'm forward declaring it in my definitions, and then the actual type definition is in game. I don't know if it should be in game though. I can't put game in here because game.h is including the threads. So then I have an inclusion recursion loop. I don't know. Yeah, we have string style. Maybe we put all this stuff here, text max, text use, text layout. Okay. Yeah, we have a lot of text related stuff. Every time I'm adding something, I'm just throwing it into game.h because I don't know where to put it otherwise. And then later on, I decide if I put it in a different file. So I feel like that should be enough. So we need to add it here. Was it underscore? Now we can add string shape here. And maybe I will delete this forward declaration and see if we have any issues somewhere. What is the issue? String params. I'm including it. Uh-huh. You think my adjustment fixed it? Thanks for letting me know. You know, I put it pretty aggressively just because I'm not alone in the room. You know, I might have a TV in the background, dogs are barking, you know, whatever. I don't have a door to close around me, but if my words are being cut off, that's not better. Yeah, we have that now. Entity is complaining because it doesn't know about it. Or it does know about it technically, but I have this very aggressively I have the warning set very aggressively, so it will tell me if it's not directly included, which is not strictly necessary, but I feel like it's good for keeping things clean. Now I might rename this actually, but let's not think about it too hard right now. Font size counts. It's not directly included. Yeah. So we can put it here. You do the same with using a noise filter, largely because of your AC. That's why you even notice it being an issue. Sing game. Entity. Okay, now it should compile. Cool. Yeah, like it's the struggle of living in a small apartment. But thanks for letting me know. See, and now this is going to be 276 bytes. And what do? Do I put a line as 64 here? So as far as I understand, 64 bytes is the like gold standard for cache lines. I want to just push this onto this array and have it always be thread safe, reading and writing. I don't want any overlap between threads. Now, to make it truly thread safe, you can do this. And you might think, well, this is already 276 bytes. What is it? Who cares? But you can see that if I'm adding 64 bytes of padding here, not padding, alignment, then I get 44 bytes of padding. With 128, I get 108. Now, for 1,000 tasks, I don't really care. Like, I don't really see the benefit. We could read the cache line size. I think that's a function. Cache descriptor. The cache line size in bytes. So we could read this, and then we could, instead of using align as, we could align it manually. But I'm not gonna do it, dude. Like, it's a little bit overkill. Now, I think if I put align as here, do I also have to put it here? Or is this automatically on that 128 byte boundary? Alignment 128 bytes. So I think I don't have to put it here. It's already set to be that. I want to, let's ask some ChatGPT AI crash. Mm, yes, it seems like this is safe. I don't have to add align as 128 here. So this is now this many bytes. How much is that? It's 400 kilobytes. 408 kilobytes roughly. That's nothing, dude. Like I don't care about 400 kilobytes. Now, if we would have 100 or 1,000 of these, then I might start caring. But we're gonna have like three, four maximum. So I think that's fine. At some point, you have to also like cut your losses. Now, if we add something different here, we add another struct, then that struct, like, okay, let's do like this, right? Test and make it, hold on. Right. So let's see, what was I doing? Yeah. Let's make this KB64. So this is 64 kilobytes now of command data. Now this is going to be a lot more. Can I not paste that? Hello? I think I had a rogue character. Yeah. So if I would do this for some reason, like I have to be very wary of the size of these union structs, because now this is 64 megabytes, and that's something I would be concerned about. But I don't imagine that I would ever have any kind of data here that is more than, you know, a kilobyte. If it's more than a kilobyte, I would reconsider. But yeah, it's it's basically only going to be the arguments for any function that I'm calling, and the arguments for those functions are going to be on the size of less than a kilobyte. I'm almost certain. So yeah, I need to take a short break, so I will be back soon. But don't go anywhere. When I get back, we will be trying this out and try to write to this args thing and see if we are crashing from OpenGL. Yeah, stay tuned. Okay, let's not forget unmuting the mic. So yeah, I think this is enough to get us started. Let's, when we push a task, what do we do? That's something, right? We, I think the smartest thing to do here, so rather than having void star data, we will just use the index of the task. But then I need to know the index of the task, right? I guess we will find out if we know that. So let's remove this for now. And then instead of void star data, well, it's still void star args. and stride. Would be mem copy, right? Undeclared. We are putting this in here as well. Now, again, because this is such a small copy, I'm not too worried about the size of it, that it might take, a few nanoseconds. Hey, 128 bytes, thanks for the subscription. I'm doing my best. I'm trying to be honest with the things that I don't know, but I also feel like the things that I do know, I know them for a reason, and that's because I'm actually going through it and trying to understand it. So I'm explaining to the best of my ability. I might not get everything 100% right, but at least I'm trying to explain my process, right? So yeah, we are copying from the arguments into here with a stride. So when we are calling this function in here, we are doing thread task arg. And then we say args.textcreate.command. This needs to have, we need to copy the string here, similar to this. Now, do I... What I'm doing right now is I'm copying it twice. I'm copying it into this command here, and I'm giving it as a pointer. My voice is too low. More mic issues. Property. So I guess we can ba 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 20 is I hope that's better. So yeah, thank you for telling me about mic issues. I can't hear myself. I have watched my own videos, but I can boost the volume. This is way better. Okay, thank you. Yeah. We are copying this into the command, and I'm just going to do it this way because probably I don't want to do it this way later. But when we reach this entity, we are having some car command. I'm just going to copy, but do I know the size of the command? I kind of would like to have a string here. Although this is 0 terminated. So I can do stir copy from to args text create command. Wait, what? Dest size. Stir len and the sources command. Now this is a little bit hacky. I don't want it to work this way, ideally. What is the issue? It discards qualifiers. Because it's const. I guess it doesn't have to be const. No, that's in threads. I guess we can just not do the const there. And then similarly, we can do args text sparams equals sparams. Well, like that. Oops. And then args and size of args, right? So let's actually verify that that works fine. What? Fatal program exit? Where? Stir copy add font? Really? Okay, let's take a look at what's going on here. So we have this command. This should be 256 bytes. That's all fine. Now this is garbage. I don't know why that's there. Oh, I know why it's there. It's because when I do sprintf here, I'm not null. I'm not doing this right. So sprintf is only writing the things that are actually relevant, which is including the null terminator. But then anything after the 23rd byte, because this is 22 characters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, or maybe this is 2. Yeah, anyway, this is including the null terminator. So anything after the 23rd byte is going to be garbage. Now, I don't really care for this. So that's good. Stir len command is therefore going to be, well, I can't do that. Oops. $21. And like I said, args. This is 256. that's fine. So why am I hitting this? How did I learn C? By programming a whole lot. Like, there's not really any two ways about it. You can study C, or you can study programming in general. You can read books, but that will only get you halfway. And the way I got started was by going through the Handmade Hero series. Now he's doing C++, but he's not really using anything super specific to C++. Definitely nothing like really modern. So I started with this, and then I went through all the way down to like day 100 or something when he started doing OpenGL. And from that point, like I was just following along, literally. Is this me? No. Huh? Oh, it's some other guy. Some guy made this playlist. It's not official, I guess. Yeah, I followed along here, and I was just basically in the beginning, I had to copy paste, but like I was watching the video and writing what he did and trying and doing that. And like every video, even though it's an hour, it would take me like 4 hours to go through. And eventually I just learned enough to do it on my own. And since then I've spent, the past 5 years programming on my own projects and doing, small applications and things like this. I've right now, with the point with this project is also to learn Emscripten and programming for browsers. But it's really just it's a skill like anything else. You practice and you get better. And the best way to practice is to write something, make a challenge for yourself, and not give up. And even if you don't finish, try to do something that you haven't done before, or at least push yourself. And then it stays interesting, and you will also learn something from it, even if the project fails, But try to keep every project to something that is achievable. And you can have a project that lasts a month, but in the beginning, I would literally recommend just, doing calculators or some simple terminal program. Don't start with doing multithreading with graphics APIs and things like this. Problem solving? Yeah. Well, problem solving is a different category of issues. So like when it comes to programming, there's two parts to programming. One is learning how the computer works and how the syntax is written. So you need to be able to, like, if you visualize a problem, then the programming language is there to help you complete the task. So at the beginning, you don't really know so much about the programming language. You need to have very simple tasks so that you're learning how to write code, how the execution of the program works, what offsets are, how do addresses work, what happens when you write to memory that you haven't properly assigned, or what strides are and how you work with them. But once you get past that point, and it takes maybe 6 months, a year, 2 years, depends on how seriously you take it. You could probably learn C very well in like 6 months if you really take it seriously. But then you have the second problem, which is like actually having a problem that you need to solve. So if you're trying to solve a problem, then that's completely abstracted from the programming language. Like the implementation that you're doing is related to the programming language. And for that, you need to have knowledge about the system and the programming language. But to actually solve a problem, maybe you need to do something very specific in math. And then you need to learn how math works to solve a problem. So it's the thing I love about programming is that it gives you the freedom to solve issues or solve tasks, solve problems. And you sometimes you do something stupid, but it still solves the issue. And most of the time that works fine, at least in C. Unless you do something really stupid, then it just works. Yeah, it's kind of like a huge puzzle sometimes. Anyway, I'm just rambling right now. So let's see, why is this not working? So the way I can reason about this is because I have a mental model of how C works. So I know what I've done here with my thread task arg. And I know that I have a struct here aligned on a 128 border, 128 byte border. And I know that it's the size of 276 because, that's how many things I put inside. Also, I have this alignment to make it aligned with this. So I know all those things because I have experience with C. But now I have this issue, this string copy. Is there something I'm missing here with string copy S? Another thing to programming is knowing how to look up documentation, how to read documentation, how to work with it. So here's the documentation for string copy S. So if you have never programmed before, you will not understand this, most likely. Like this is meaningless. This is meaningless, maybe. And you're like, wcar, r size t, like what is this? And those are things that you will learn with time. I'm using this one. I don't know what I'm doing wrong though. I'm literally creating this on the stack. And I'm trying to write to it. And you can see in my debugger that everything exists. I have a good length. 21 bytes is good. The size of this is 256. So I don't know. Let me try something. Let me zero initialize this. This is definitely a pointer. And this is all good. Exactly what I would expect. Okay, what happens if I do this before? Is that having the same issue? No. So there's nothing wrong with the memory here. It's literally just this function. And you can see here, invoke Watson. Invoke Watson is a thing in Windows where it's like trying to sanitize. It's trying to make sure that your memory accesses are valid, I think. We can check it out. What did it say? It's an internal Microsoft C runtime function that crashed your program. It's what made you look at this dump. It's the secure version. It ensures that sprintf cannot write past the end of the buffer. It did write past the end of the buffer, and that's what triggered the crash, which is how I understand it. But the issue is this length is 21. It's literally... This is 256, this is 256, and I'm trying to write 21 bytes. So am I dumb? Is it the macro that is wrong? Dest size source. Oops. Dest size. Oh, I'm dumb. I am dumb. Okay. So here's what happened. So it didn't want the size of my string to copy. It wanted to have the size of the destination, which of course it says dest size, not the size of the thing of how many bytes I'm trying to copy. So I don't want that at all. I want size of args text create command. So it needs to know that this command is 256 bytes because it doesn't know otherwise. That's the reason for the crash. Okay. See, but we only realized that because we were reading this documentation here. String copy s, destination size. And this destination size, if you would read the documentation, which I ignored, it says size of the destination string buffer in car units. So that's exactly what it means. It's this. Now we will not have the crash. So I was telling a string copy that the destination buffer size was 21, and then I tried to copy 22 bytes with a null terminator, and then it said you can't do that. All right, so we go here, and this all looks good now. Data 0. We can actually watch here. You can see it here a little bit nicer. It's exactly what I expect. And then we go to push. So let's see. Our reserved write index is 0. So we can just look at this here. And we only have one right now, but you can imagine there's multiple function args here. And I like to put this union name to be the function name. But maybe we should call it args just to differentiate it. But then you get kind of, it gets kind of long. All right. That's a little bit nicer at least. So now we are pushing this to the thread queue, but we're not really doing anything with it in here in our thread draw. We are just spinning and doing nothing. Now I'm curious if I will crash. Let's compile it. So the reason we crashed before, not the latest one, but like the reason we crashed at the beginning of the stream was because we were having the OpenGL context on a different thread than the main thread, but then we tried to call OpenGL functions on the main thread, and that doesn't work. So now we're trying to schedule a task on the OpenGL thread, and then we just continue, but nothing is ever created. So I'm wondering what is crashing right now. Mesh primitive create. It's another one of those add primitive texture rectangle. Okay. So we need to do something similar for the rectangle. That's also in entity, I think. I think this is just calling add primitive, yeah. So maybe we just do it here. Now, what does the primitive need? Do all of these need align as? I think no, but I'm not sure. It would very much surprise me if we need to have align as here on all of them. But I will put it there for now. Now we are trying to do this function, args. And what do we need? We need the state. We need result. The entity. Why do we need the entity? Mesh. Primitive create. Hold on. No. We don't need the entity. We need the mesh destination. I was thinking, why do we need the entity? We don't need the entity. The entity is having a mesh assigned to it. So this is the mesh. Let's go to the actual definition here. Primitive create mesh. We need the type of primitive. Where does this live? Component.h. I guess we can add that here. We also need calc. I3 shader program ID. Textures. Mm-hmm. I need a max number of uniform buffers. Because I can't have just a pointer like this. Let's say 8. This uniform buffer count, I can, if I have a maximum amount of uniform buffers, then I can probably skip the count. Because I can just say if one is -1 or something, if the ID is invalid, and I don't know what an invalid would be. I don't think a uniform buffer can have the ID 0. So let's go mesh primitive create. This doesn't exist anymore. And we can go to game header. And we can remove this because I don't want to use this function pointer. And OpenGL header on open, I think. Hello? No? Ah, wait. I know why. It's in here. So yeah, we have a new signature for this function. And remove this. And to complete this, huh? Ah, they are not used. Okay, that's fine. Uniform buffer IDs. Super. Now this is still less. You see 88 bytes compared to this one, 276, just because this command is so large. So this is why if we're keeping it under, you know, couple hundred bytes, then even a huge argument like this is not going to be like anything to care about. And these, where's this mesh? Where is the memory for that? That is on the heap. Yeah, meshes manager. That is entirely managed within the game. I'm wondering if I'm going to have a race condition here. Because let's say I'm having my heap manager. It's pushing a new entity using the free slots. That's fine. We get a pointer, we put it here, we get our mesh back, and everything is great. Then later, I pop one of these meshes. Well, the mesh doesn't know that in the graphics. What is mesh anyway? It's all of this stuff. I think we can get away with it because the mesh is not, it's only used within the game loop. It's not actually, on multiple threads. What are we using the mesh for? We're using it to calculate the bounding box. And then we have this graphics mesh. Is a void star. And that is used by the OpenGL loop. This is the difficult part about multithreading, that you really have to think about where you have race conditions and where you don't. Because in my mesh draw here, you can see that I am not using this mesh at all, but I am using the graphics mesh. And that graphics mesh is copied from here to here in the game loop. And then the OpenGL loop assumes that this exists. If we take a look at game.h, you will see that I'm actually having two heap managers for this. I'm having my meshes manager, which is the game specific stuff. And then I'm having my graphics mesh manager. And because the graphics mesh manager will only be so only the game loop is managing these, and only the OpenGL is managing these. But the issue is if I'm making updates on this one, that is not necessarily updated in real time for this. So for example, I can delete an object here, and I'm pushing a deletion for this one, for the corresponding mesh. Yeah, I might need to rethink how I do this a little bit. But for now, let's ignore it for now, you know, famous last words, and just add this primitive to our threads. Oh, we need random also. Everything was so much simpler when I did everything. Yeah, here. A pointer. No, we're not doing a pointer. We're doing the full thing. Oops. Well, that doesn't really matter. Okay. So now we have this. So we go to entity and we create it, args. And we can do it's a little bit annoying. I think I don't think there's a way of avoiding this syntax. If we want to keep it very obvious what we're doing. Mesh is equal to eMesh. Primitive is primitive. Size is size. Shader program ID. Textures. Can I not do that? What did I do to learn multithreading? Was it a book or WSP? I don't know what WSP is. I don't know what WSP is. No, I learned multithreading by doing it, basically. I again, I think do I still have that? No. Again, I started with Handmade Hero. And if you go here, he has a playlist for, let's load everything. Hello? Where is it? Here we go. Okay. So he has 16 videos on this, and I watched them all, and I went through, or maybe I don't think I went through this one. It's mostly the ones up to here, I think. So between 122 and 166. WSP equals what's up. All right. So yeah, I watched these videos up to like here. And from there, I just wrote, 3-4 programs utilizing multi-threading and got hands-on experience with it. And, that's it. Now, I'm not claiming to be an expert on it or anything, but I know enough about it to know how to use it and what I need to look out for. And that's enough to do most things. Now, if you would ask me something very specific about multi-threading, I might not be able to answer, but I know enough to be able to work with it. That doesn't mean I know everything. So I might program something that doesn't work, and then we will find out the hard way. And the issue with multi-threading specifically is that when you have a bug, they can be very difficult to track down. So you need to make sure that you know what you're doing from the beginning, which is difficult because you need to go through it once to learn. And that's why these videos are so good, because he's basically showing you how to do multi-threading the easy way. And then you can, use that as a starting off point to learn more. Yeah. So we can't do that. Should I just do this? Like, it doesn't really matter. I only have 4 of them. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. I hope it helps. Now here we have 8. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It works. Rand. And I guess we do this. And that's it. Now this is a little bit chunky, but it will work. So we can do the same as before, which was task push. Graphics queue. Primitive create. This one. Can I, without this? It's annoying. I just want the function pointer. Or do I? Hold on. I'm missing a critical thing. I will get to that soon. Args. Now you might wonder, why can I push the pointer of args here? Well, it's because we are copying within this function, and then when we return, this is not any longer the data that we're using for the function. So that's completely fine. And the stride is, of course, args pointer. All right. So the thing that I forget to do is in my thread task, I have a message here. Well, I want to be able to set this message. So we update the function signature in here. Now these will complain because I don't have enough arguments. And this, I need to add a message for that. So it will be this message. Wait, what? I think I want the message to be before the function. That makes sense to me. Okay. And the other one. Entity header. This is the worst thing about C, updating function signatures at primitive, was it? Yeah. Okay. And then this one needs to have a message gfx create text. And what is the issue down here? Oh. This is sort of just like an overload, but with pre-filled information. So what are we missing from here? Well, we don't really have... That's a null pointer and... Ooh, okay. So when we call this, we need to make sure that this is not a null pointer. And if it's a null pointer, well, we're screwed. So Oops. Or rather, do I even really need to do that? Can I not just do UBID equals uniform buffer IDs? Can I not do that? I just don't want to like write a bunch of code to like copy paste a bunch of values that I'm not even sure that I will do it like this anyway. What's the smart move? Okay. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but it works. And the textures, can that be a null pointer? References. Hmm? The thing, it can be a null pointer. That's the thing. Like it doesn't matter if I'm using any null pointers anywhere. It, by definition, it can be a null pointer. And that's the issue. So I need to do the same thing for that. Whatever. So text null, text. If textures is null pointer, then text is the null one. And it's this. And otherwise it's this. And we are like that. What did we forget? In OpenGL. Right. So I removed the count because if I'm having a maximum count anyway, it doesn't really matter. We can just do the maximum. And then we say if uniform buffer IDs I is equal to 0, which I think should be a valid, invalid. It should be an invalid ID. Then we break. And otherwise we get the buffer and stuff like that. But I forget if the uniform buffer IDs can actually be 0. It depends on So the buffer can be 0 because I made it that way. The buffer index is different from the OpenGL ID, this thing. So it can be 0, which means what I did was completely wrong. Uniform buffer in ID. So I should probably make a graphics. So then we have to set them all. And there's 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, and of course it doesn't. This one is not including it. So we put it in definitions. This is a little bit a spaghetti code right now because this is not. I'm just kind of patching it as I go to explore. But I don't know. I don't really like that. One more thing here, buffer create. No? Too many arguments? Aha. Yes. You see here we have textures is nothing. So it was a good thing that I prepared for it. Too many arguments. It's another one. Cool. Now we compile. I don't think we will run. We will find out. Oh. Access violation. One of these are a null pointer. The random one. So many interesting challenges. So the reason why is because I have this seed. The seed is just, a state and incrementer, and that's how I have different random generators, right? So hold on, what time is it? 2:15. Okay. These are created on the fly for some specific entity ID. So I create an entity, and then based on that entity, I can create a seed. But it's not only it's not only the initialized state, it's also the number of times I have called random next, because that's incrementing the random value. So because of that, I'm just giving it the random seed thing. And then when I'm going into the primitive create, I have the random here. And based on if it's a null pointer or not, in this function actually, based on if this is a null pointer or not, I'm either using it or not, right? Now I don't want it to be a pointer anymore because I need to store it in some part of memory that is thread safe. But then I can't differentiate between the random seed being there or not. Then I have to add some Boolean to like, is this being used? So I guess, well, it doesn't really need to be on this one. This one can stay with this, at least for now. But this mesh primitive creates, we need to take the full thing. Or do we? No, we don't. We don't need to do that. But the function, the thread task needs to know. So we go back to entity. And then we do this. If it's another, you know, if null pointer, right? Hold on. Right. Sorry, everyone. I am out of time. What I wanted to say is just, we have the seed. If rand, then, oh, and so if this exists, if it's not a null pointer, then we do seed equals rand, and rand used equals true. Otherwise, we do seed equals null, like nothing. Wait. Let's just do this. I don't really have time. Right. And then we just use this seed and rand. Oh. Like that. Okay. So that's gonna probably work. I hope. I am out of time, so thank you very much for watching. Sorry for the abrupt quit or ending, but that's just how it is. So see you next time, and goodbye.